hairstylist can tell whether a haircut reads modern or dated in about 3 seconds from across the room before you've said a single word. Professionals almost never look at the haircut first. They look at movement. It isn't the length. It isn't even the gray. It's one single quality. And once I show you what it is, you'll start seeing it in every mirror you pass for the rest of the week. Here's the promise. 7 hairstyles quietly do the same thing to a woman's face. And the 7th is the one that catches nearly everyone off guard. It's often the haircut a woman chooses specifically to look polished. We'll come back to that one, because everything we cover first is really building toward it. Welcome to the timeless wardrobe. If today is your first time here, welcome. If you're enjoying practical advice that respects your age instead of fighting it, this is exactly what we share here every week. Consider subscribing, because every video is designed to help you feel elegant with confidence, not by chasing trends, but by understanding what actually works. Here's something worth saying plainly before we go any further. This isn't your fault. None of these 7 styles happened because you stopped caring. Most women don't choose any of them because they look dated. They choose them because, at some point, they suited her beautifully. The hairstyle simply stayed the same. Your hair quietly did not. Here's the one quality tying all 7 of these together. And it's worth holding on to as we go. Movement. Not length, not color, not even the cut itself. Whether a hairstyle moves, catches light, and shifts naturally when you turn your head, or whether it sits frozen in one shape, no matter what you do. Frozen reads older. Movement reads alive. Everything from here forward is really just 7 different ways. That principle quietly gets lost. And 7 ways to get it back. You lean toward the bathroom mirror in the morning, running a brush through hair that falls in one heavy, uniform line, exactly the way it has for years. And you think quietly it's fine. It's clean, it's neat, nothing wrong with it. That word, fine, is doing a lot of work it probably shouldn't be. A one-length blunt cut, with no layering anywhere, is the first place movement quietly disappears. Every strand ends at exactly the same point, which means the entire shape behaves like a single sheet, rather than something with texture or lift. It reads as heavy rather than sleek, and the hemline you worked so hard to keep even ends up doing the opposite of what you intended. It drags the whole face downward instead of framing it. This is a matter of layering and lift, the principle of breaking up density. So hair has somewhere to move rather than simply hanging. The fix doesn't mean losing the length you love. Soft, face-framing layers around the front, with the back left as long as you like. Restore movement exactly where the eye lands first, around the cheekbones, without sacrificing a single inch you weren't ready to give up. A cut with no layers isn't low maintenance. It's simply still. This is where most women accidentally make the next mistake, because on the surface, it looks like the tittiest, most put-together choice in the room. Here's something almost nobody hears from a stylist unless they ask directly. A hard, dead center part is the least forgiving line in hairstyling. Full stop. It's perfectly symmetrical, which sounds like it should be flattering, but symmetry has a strange side effect. It highlights every single change in a face over time, because there's nowhere for the eye to soften. It draws a straight line down the exact middle of the forehead, and leaves nothing to distract from it. This comes down to diagonal proportion, the idea that soft, angled lines read as more flattering to the eye than perfectly straight, perfectly even ones, because they suggest movement even when the hair itself is still. A side part, even shifted just an inch or 2 off-center, does something close to magic. It adds instant volume at the root on one side, softens the forehead, and creates that same diagonal line that reads as effortless rather than rigid. Try this tonight. Run your fingers through your hair right after a shower, and notice which side it naturally wants to fall toward. That's very likely your most flattering part already. You just haven't been using it on purpose. Quick, honest question for the comments. Is your part dead center right now? Or have you already found your natural side? I'd genuinely like to know how many of us are already doing this one right without realizing it. At first, the next one looks like a completely different problem. It isn't. It's the same principle wearing a longer disguise. Here's a myth worth dismantling directly, because it stops so many women from even considering a change. The idea that long hair itself is the problem after 60. It isn't. Diane Keaton, Meryl Streep, dozens of women who've aged with real presence on camera, have worn long hair well past 60 and looked exactly the opposite of dated doing it. Length was never the enemy. What actually works against you is length without shape, specifically, hair that extends well past the shoulder blades while getting progressively finer, which is simply something hair tends to do over time, the same way skin and everything else changes texture. That thinning combined with excess length means the weight of all that hair pulls what's left completely flat against the scalp, erasing any lift and leaving the ends looking wispy rather than luxurious. This is weight distribution, the same principle a tailor uses on a heavy coat. Weight has to go somewhere, and if it isn't being redistributed on purpose, it settles in the least flattering place possible, which for hair is usually flat against the crown and thin at the ends. The fix isn't cutting it all off. It's bringing the length to somewhere between the collarbone and just past the shoulder, with interior layers cut underneath the top layer. So the length stays but the weight lightens dramatically. You keep the elegance of long hair. It simply starts moving again instead of hanging still, swinging softly when you turn your head instead of sitting there like something borrowed from a much younger version of yourself, 10 years ago, when the same length behaved completely differently. Long hair was never the mistake. Long hair with nowhere for the weight to go. That was. The surprising part is that the next habit has nothing to do with a haircut at all. It's something almost every woman does to hair that's already perfectly fine, and undoes it in about 4 seconds each morning. There's a habit almost every woman reaches for on a busy morning, and it feels completely harmless. Gathering everything up into a tight, high ponytail or bun, and heading out the door. It's practical, it's fast, and it does something to your face you're probably not expecting. Pulling hair tightly upward stretches the skin at the temples and along the hairline. In your 20s, skin bounces back from that tension within seconds. Past 60, that same tension can genuinely emphasize fine lines around the eyes and forehead rather than smoothing anything. The exact opposite of the polished effect most women are reaching for. There's also a volume cost nobody mentions. A tight ponytail flattens the crown completely, and a flat crown reads as dated in nearly every era of hairstyling, regardless of a woman's actual age. This is simple tension and release. How much pull a style puts on the skin and scalp, and what that pull does to both the face and the shape. A loose, low ponytail or a soft, low bun, with a few gentle pieces left out around the temples, releases that tension entirely, and somehow looks more polished, not less, while taking noticeably less effort to create. If you love having your hair up, gather it low rather than high, and pull a small amount of volume forward at the crown with your fingers before securing it. One small adjustment, and the entire feel of the style changes. At first glance, the next one looks elegant, even a little youthful, until you notice what it's quietly doing to the whole upper half of the face. Picture this for a moment. 2 women at the same lunch table, same haircut in every other respect. One with heavy, straight-across bangs sitting exactly at the eyebrow line, the other with the same length hair, but soft, side-swept pieces framing her face instead. From across the restaurant, you'd likely say the second woman looks more rested, not because she is, but because of a single horizontal line. The first woman is wearing right across her forehead. Heavy blunt bangs carry real charm, and they photograph beautifully on plenty of faces. The risk after 60 is twofold. First, a hard horizontal line across the forehead can make the eyes read smaller and box in the whole upper face, almost like a low ceiling. Second, blunt bangs demand constant upkeep. The moment they grow out even slightly, they shift from intentional to unkempt, and inconsistent grooming reads as aging faster than almost anything else on this list, simply because it signals a style that isn't being maintained. Soft, side-swept, wispy bangs solve both problems. They still soften the forehead the way blunt bangs do, but they blend rather than interrupt, and they grow out gracefully. instead of turning into an accidental mullet within 3 weeks. If you're nervous about bangs altogether, ask for a few longer face framing pieces instead, sometimes called curtain pieces, for nearly all the softening benefit with none of the maintenance stress. This tiny detail changes everything, and it's the one almost no one thinks to ask their colorist about directly. This next one might be the single most common item on this entire list. And it has nothing to do with whether your color comes from nature or from a bottle. The issue is flatness. Hair that's exactly one uniform shade from root to end, with zero variation, tends to look heavier and, oddly, a little less natural, even when the color itself is beautifully applied. As natural color often loses dimension with age, many women reasonably compensate with a single solid shade for full gray coverage. Nothing wrong with wanting full coverage, but light needs somewhere to land and somewhere to recede. In order to read as three-dimensional rather than flat, and without that variation, hair can look like a solid helmet rather than something soft and alive. And it makes regrowth far more obvious. The moment a few weeks pass after a color appointment, this is light and dimension. The same principle behind good lighting in a photograph. Flat light flattens everything it touches. Varied light gives shape. Soft, face-framing highlights or a gentle balayage. Even just 2 or 3 shades lighter around the pieces near your face adds instant depth, catches light beautifully, and softens the whole face both on camera and in person, while also growing out far more gracefully than a solid shade ever could, since there's no harsh line to chase at the root. Which of these 6 felt like someone was quietly describing you today? The blunt cut, the center part, the thinning length, the tight bun, the blunt bangs, or the flat color? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and it's exactly how I decide what we cover next. And now, the one that catches almost everyone off guard, because it's rarely the haircut a woman thinks of as a mistake at all. It's often the one she chose specifically to look polished for a big event. Imagine for a moment a woman getting ready for a wedding. Hair freshly set that morning, every strand exactly in place, sprayed to hold through the whole afternoon. In every photo from that day, she looks lovely and also, somehow, 10 years older than she does on an ordinary Tuesday in a loose braid. Nobody at the wedding could say exactly why. It's the same principle we opened with, showing up in its most extreme form. A style so rigid, so completely sprayed into place, that it simply stops moving at all. No shift when she turns her head, no soft catch of light, nothing but one frozen shape held together by product. This is the whole idea we started with, in its purest version. A heavily set, oversprayed style reads as formal in the most dated possible sense, because rigidity itself signals special occasion styling from another decade, faster than any single haircut choice could. The fix isn't avoiding structure. It's choosing a softer hold, styling with a large barrel iron or a diffuser rather than a tight set, and finishing with a lightweight, flexible product instead of a heavy, stiff-holding one, so the shape still moves believably when you walk into a room, instead of arriving like a photograph of itself. The most elegant styling in the world still has to be able to move. Here's what all 7 of these actually have in common underneath the surface. None of them mean you've made a mistake. And none of them mean anything at all about your face that needs fixing. There's simply 7 different ways the same thing quietly happens. Movement disappearing, one small habit at a time, until a style that once felt effortless starts working against you instead of for you. None of this requires starting over. A one-length cut becomes soft face framing layers. A hard center part becomes a gentle side part. Length without shape becomes length with interior layers. A tight high bun becomes a loose low one. Blunt bangs become wispy, side-swept ones. Flat color becomes dimensional color. And a rigid, sprayed set becomes a softer hold that still moves when you do. Elegance was never something you lost. You'd simply never been shown exactly where movement had quietly gone missing. One layer, one part, one tight elastic at a time. Over years, you weren't even paying attention to it happening. It was never really about looking younger. It's about looking entirely at ease with the woman you've become, And sometimes that only takes letting your hair, like your confidence, move again. Tell me, out of everything today, which one are you actually changing at your very next salon appointment? Not which one surprised you most. Which one you're going to do differently. I'll be reading every answer, and I might feature a few in the next video. Give this a like if it gave you even one thing you didn't know a few minutes ago, and I'll see you in the next one.